It's time to put your health in your own hands. Get ready to learn from today's top health and wellness innovators and thought leaders on Optimal Health Radio. Now, here's your host.
Hi, this is Tammy Patzer, and I'm excited to introduce today's guest, Kathryn Sweas. Kathryn is a natural-born healer with the gift of healing that provides an opportunity for someone or something to connect with the divine of their understanding, to harness life force more readily, efficiently, and dynamically. Her gifts have been validated via preclinical scientific research using both cell-based and mouse models to suggest benefits for overall health and well-being and improved quality of life. Kathryn is a highly experienced, inspirational, and successful registered nurse who has served in the areas of holistic health and wellness, mental health, aging populations, and energy healing and body-mind therapeutics. Her drive and curiosity led her to study the health and human sciences, as well as the deeper forces inherent and between all things. In 2010, she encountered Guruji Mahendra Trivedi, founder of Trivedi Global Incorporated, and the Trivedi Effect. She recognized the Trivedi Science as a culmination to her lifelong journey to understand and experience true healing. As a registered nurse, she has practiced and served for more than 16 years in both traditional and non-traditional settings. Welcome, Kathryn.
Well, thanks, Tammy. So good to be back here with you.
Yes. The other day, we actually were talking about the elder population and their health needs. And I wanted to invite you back because it is definitely a conversation worth expanding on. And I think that there's just so much more that we can talk about. So what I wanted to ask you more about is to maybe go into some more specifics related to elders and what will bring an older person into an emergency room situation. So with that, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, sure. I have worked a lot with elderlies and have actually been facilitating people going into the emergency room, having to pull the chain on that in places like assisted living or even from their own home sometimes. So I have a lot of direct experience with that, and it's always a strong situation because going through an emergency room can be harrowing even for the young and the vibrant. But when someone is elderly, and we're talking about someone who may already be at the effect of some degenerative issues, a person who, doesn't like a lot of loud noise or temperature changes and all that, that goes on there, from getting into a gurney in an ambulance to unloading at the emergency room, and sometimes having to sit for hours. Family members are pulled out of work, or they're spending their time there and maybe under some stress with that. So the atmosphere is really not conducive to kind of a soft calmness that we need to really negotiate some strong situations. So emergency rooms are things that we might want to avoid for the elderly. That's one thing. When we can. So by getting back to what kind of drives an elder to an emergency room? First of all, I wanted to say that there was a study done by the U.S. government, and it had to do with health cost utilization review, benefits and costs and all that stuff. And what they found is about a third of most emergency room admissions, hospital admissions, come from the elderly population. And they're looking at this age group as from 65 onward. They're considering elderly population. And I looked around because I know what my own direct experience is, kind of what drives people. And then I found that the research actually backs that up. So I looked at a few different studies, including AARP has a study out there, this government utilization review, and the number of the top few that kind of fit into these categories. One of the top ones is what we call congestive heart failure. And that sounds like a very dire name. But what congestive heart is called CHF. It's a long-term degenerative process, and a person can have the beginnings of that without even knowing that. And it has to do with the heart kind of not being as effective in the pumping, and you get all sorts of systems issues. So some of the people who might be listening to this may be family members who have elders in their family, or healthcare workers who may be noticing elders moving into this situation, or the elders themselves. And you can catch it early and do things to kind of help regulate and maybe even reverse some of that. But what you want to do is notice things like kind of getting short of breath when you walk the same kind of distance that you used to, or you might notice some swelling that starts to happen, or you might want to notice, occasionally people who start having CHF symptoms, they might have like what we call a dysrhythmia in their heart, where they like skip a beat, so and so. And a lot of people know they have that because doctors have been telling you that over the years. Oh, you have a little dysregulation in your heartbeat here and there, but don't worry about it, because they're not advanced in the disease. And so what doctors understand and nurses understand is this will eventually, if left unchecked, lead to some way bigger symptomology that you want to avoid, because it gets to be very uncomfortable. So you have swelling in your legs, which can open up to problems walking, to wounds, because what starts happening is the water's not being processed well or reabsorbed through the system. And I've actually worked with elders who've had swelling in their legs to where the water starts seeping right out of the skin. And because the body just can't hold it anymore. Anywho, what I want to say about that is congestive heart failure was number one, or really up there. The other thing was trauma from broken bones, like hip fractures from falls, which often happens for elderly when they have a dehydration status that they don't even know they have, because I know a lot of elders who don't like to drink water. Also, they don't move, so the cellular metabolism is slowed way down. And so the processing and the harnessing of hydration into the cell starts to diminish. That leads to an electrolyte imbalance of like your sodium, your basic potassiums, your magnesiums, and this begins to affect activities of your brain and your muscles and your organs to the extent that when you get up to walk, you may lose balance, be weak, be dizzy. A lot of people have high blood pressure because now they have what's called thickening of your arteries, have plaque or buildup of toxins in the walls as someone ages and hasn't been working with wellness through diet and lifestyle. And so there's another reason people go to the ER is because of circulatory problems, the congestive heart, broken bones, and then another area we call infections. And in today's world, pneumonia gets to be up there for elders, because pneumonia begins to happen when there's a festering of either if it's a bacterial pneumonia, a bacteria causing kind of lots of what we call fluids to fill the lungs if left unchecked. but also even viral pneumonias, which are not bacterial and you do not have to treat with antibiotics, can create increased phlegm production and fluids that for an elder with poor circulation, it can cause a pooling of that and add to problems breathing and circulating of the fluids and the blood through the system. So people just experience chest pains, and it may be an infection in the lungs and not a heart attack, but people rush off to the emergency room. So you begin to see these same types of issues get people going into an ER over and over and over again. In the area of infection, besides pneumonia, you have urinary tract infection. And in these days, we're seeing a lot more what we call blood infection, which becomes like a generalized system infection, and that's called, you may hear it called sepsis or septicemia. Sepsis can be very dangerous because people die from that. People go into what's called septic shock, and they really, like, body systems turn down way low, and they can go into a coma. Body systems start like really not functioning well. So we have to be careful because the elders system tends to be a little bit more frail because they're working against the grain of living a lot more because their systems have slowed down. Life force is not being harnessed well, and they're not taking in the nutrition and the hydration from their world. And then you add onto that, Tammy, things like elders tend to get more isolated than younger people. They're not out of their house enough. They're not even moving in their house enough. So we have issues with non-stimulation. We have sadness. We have anxieties. We have hormonal imbalances that happen in the neurohormones from just lack of stimulation, that sense of being cut off from life, which is a very, very potent, what we call inhibitory experience, meaning that it keeps our systems down, like our spirit starts to lag. I don't know if whoever's listening here you can recall a time where you may have felt disenfranchised from a group of friends or coworkers or family members or somehow the odd person out. And you can recall those feelings that kind of can come up in you and you start thinking all sorts of things and maybe becoming kind of self-judgmental or judgmental and separating from your world. It creates a flow of chemicals in us that aren't very healthy. Well, imagine that happening a little bit more each day. So what we're working against there is almost like a suppression of spirit and life force in a way that affects our mental outlook or our ability to have what we call higher and more life-giving emotions running through us. So the elder is really challenged with a lot coming at them. And often what's offered in response to that is medication. Because even if you suggest lifestyle changes to an elder, they're limited because they might need someone to help them make those lifestyle changes.
Yes, I think that as I'm listening to you, I know that there have been periods of time, and I don't even think it has to be necessarily that you're elderly to have some of those feelings of being separated from other people. I think most people go through ups and downs like that. And you were talking about medicine and these trips to the emergency room. It's kind of interesting because I did have a question related to why are the people going to the emergency room versus to a a general practitioner or to a primary doctor? Is it because they just don't have a doctor, or do they feel that they're that sick that they need that type of attention? Or is it just because they're not educated in where to go?
Okay, so yeah, that's a really good question. And it really bespeaks kind of the state of affairs in our healthcare system in the country right now. And it's not a really bright picture, I have to say, working as a nurse within the system. What I see is a lot of people have insurance, and a lot of it's covered. There's Medicare, but then there might even be private insurance involved. But that insurance, unless you're pretty in a high socioeconomic bracket and have been prepared well from a wealthy husband who's maybe passed on, or you have, who's worked for many years at a great company, not a lot of people have those types of insurances that will cover them for their private physician who they have a long-term relationship with, and they can just, and those physicians are far and few between these days. You have a lot of physicians who are working for corporate medical institutions, and those corporate systems are run through like mills a lot, meaning that if you have a doctor's appointment, you make it, you go in quarterly or twice a year to see your doctor. But if something comes up and you try to get a doctor's appointment made, it's very difficult to get seen within that same day or the next day. I've often had to advocate as a care manager and try to make that happen. And usually what the response we get is things like, send them to the ER, send them to the ER, send them to the ER. Now, there are things called urgent care centers, and those are, you need to know that those are limited. Those are also nice to use because they're located in the neighborhood. You don't have to battle the long waiting lines necessarily that you do in an ER waiting room. But they're limited in what they can do. They can certainly take some basic x-rays for let's say, an elderly person fell and they're having pain and can't move. Someone has noticed something feels very wrong with a particular joint or limb, or if they've hit their head and it's bleeding, they best be getting a CAT scan or an x-ray to see if there's broken bones. But often, like for hip fractures, which is really high on the list for elders with broken fractures, is hip. They go boom, they hit that ground, they have poor bones, and there you go. Pelvic fractures, broken hips. And usually in these urgent care centers, you cannot get, they don't have the equipment for that size of x-ray. You need a big table, you need a bigger scenario. So they'll say, oh boy, now that you've been here for 2 hours and we finally get to see what it really is, you're going to have to go to the ER. That has happened for some of our elders that I've worked with. So we say, we recognize that if we're going to choose something out of the great medical encampment out there, going to the ER is probably your best bet if you really don't know what you're dealing with. Urgent care centers are still good for being able to get you on the antibiotics, get seen by a doctor, have a medical assessment, and diagnose you with something, get you a urinary tract infection or a wound care, things like that, or even to check your heart and then decide what's next, because they have mobile equipment there, but they don't have what a big medical center is going to have at a hospital. So that's what happens. And because often elders don't have available drivers and they're not drivers themselves, they don't have a friend that can help shuffle them into a car or a family member who can get there and because they're isolated, they're living out of state or something like that, and to drive an elder over when they can't mobilize very well, often you need like a wheelchair van or something like that. And while those things, you can order a wheelchair taxi or get like private transport for elders, it takes too long when it's like in an acute emergency and a person can't breathe, they have a heart chest pain, or all of a sudden they're getting weak and unconscious or something like that. You want to move them fast. And so that's why emergency rooms are very tasked. And in the field of medicine right now, there's lots of programs that are starting up because they see the crisis. They see the crisis with the cost for these emergency room visits, insurance company costs, and it's kind of a big problem, our healthcare system delivery right now, to be able to afford decent health care for everyone who needs it in a way that is intelligent and caring and in non-intrusive and non-toxic. When you have a broken bone or you need, an emergency surgery, you want that emergency room to push you through and do the strong things and hook you up. But oftentimes for elderly, what they're needing is really, they're needing like a bag of hydration, an IV of hydration. And I tell you, people like turn into like, the risen person from the dead when they get hydrated. They're starting to move. The pond becomes a river a little bit more. Their life force comes up. They're thinking better. They're walking better. They have better energy. But the point is the elder in and of themselves, as they're living on their own or even living in a community, often doesn't get that kind of support to really get the right substances in the right way. So, as a nurse looking at all this, I can say things like, oh, we need more at-home, mobile IV vans. I've always thought about that. It'd be like a nice answer, but somebody's got to pay for that. And insurance companies aren't covering that yet. And a lot of people don't want to spend money out of their pocket for their own health care. I myself, as a nurse, I do not depend on our medical healthcare system in this country for my health care. I do a lot of self-care because I've learned how to do that and what works for me, but it includes the basics of nature, like movement and connection and learning and eating very healthy for my body. And I know, if I diverge from that, I know how to create a repair space for myself to reset my system. I'm well connected in life. I've spent my life making good associations, and I'm still in the process of raising that frequency. And people who are not, or opportunities, or the way I spend my time, like I don't watch TV. That's been out of my life for over a decade, because there's certain things in common lifestyle that are bring us down and hold us down into lower limited states of being alive that we can get rid of. But it requires courage, commitment, the willingness to take in new information and then implement it and put it into our lives. So there's a learning curve that needs to happen with that. No, I don't use our medical system. I don't go in for yearly exams. I don't go in for getting blood tests or anything. I just know. How do I know? I know that my life force has improved a lot. My vitality, my mental vigor, I work from the beginning of my day to the end, whether it's working in my home, at my computer, with my personal business, working with clients, connecting with friends and projects that I do. I put out so much energy each day of my life. And that's because I have chosen other methods to support my vitality and life force.
So, you've talked a lot about, it's kind of scary.
It is. We're near crisis. We're near crisis in this country.
Number one, getting older, and it's also scary to know that we are in a healthcare crisis, and that we literally, especially in the United States, as a nation, we've been trained to believe in sick care, not in health care, because our insurance is designed primarily for if you get sick, not to keep you healthy in the first place. And then there does seem to be that many people, they don't educate themselves about movement or about eating right. I mean, it would seem like we are a well-educated people, with all of the gyms and centers around, but they've proven that most people, they don't keep their gym memberships. It may be in January, they go for a couple weeks and then that's it. And then they repeat that cycle, or maybe they, get fat during the winter, lose weight, try to lose weight for the summer, because it just seems like if you look at the cycles, and then as we get older, I mean, I've seen people, who are, in their 80s and 90s, who are still running around looking good, and they're mentally there and they're looking good. And then there's other people that by the time they're in their 70s, I mean, they're like crippled up and, can't hardly walk. If you go on a airplane, this is like where you can really see some a little observation post as to travel, and of course you'll see all of these people in wheelchairs getting wheeled onto the airplane.
Yes,
they're often, they're elderly, let's say 60 plus, but the reason that they're in a wheelchair is because I guess they can't walk well enough or fast enough, I guess, through the airport. And then, of course, they're escorted on and off the airplane and everything. Sometimes I see people, and it's real obvious, that they have an illness or the broken leg or something, but a lot of them just look like ordinary people. They don't appear to have anything, but obviously they do. I know my own sister went on a trip and she was healthy, yet she had them wheeling her around in a wheelchair. And I was like, why did you do that? And her reasoning was, this was her reasoning, was that she felt like she could move through the airport quicker and get from point A to point B, and that she wouldn't have to worry about falling down or whatever the issues were, that she was thinking that she might have in a big international airport. I just, my personal opinion was, oh, that's really strange. But I see that, and you will see literally in a 140 passenger airplane, there might be 10 to 20 people who have that wheelchair escort. And I think that's quite a few people when you stop and think about that. So as a nurse, and again, it's always interesting to hear from someone who is in the health profession, talk about the fact that they don't rely on the sick care in our country or the medical care, that they're always looking for healthier, non-invasive, non-toxic alternatives. So you actually are someone who does have some information related to safe, non-invasive, and non-toxic health energy, or ways to get your life force energy more active. And before we started our recording, we were talking about how sitting in front of a computer is one way that so many people are, harming their health. And again, it's not even about watching television, but it is about sitting. And
Yes.
Sitting in one spot and not getting that physical activity and exercise that your body really pays the price. So tell me more about the alternatives that you found that are safe, non-invasive, and non-toxic that could actually upgrade an elder's life.
Okay, I'll start with a few different things that are simple and that all kind of tie in. One thing is to just take stock in the moment of your living space that you spend a lot of your time in, whether it's with a computer, with the TV, in your living home, how much time you are at the effect of blue light, which means your cell phone, your computer screens, your little tablet screens, and limit. Keep that out of your sleep space because you sleep a large part of your 24-hour cycle. Move that out of your space and limit the time you do. And for those of us who often do a lot of our business on computers these days, it's about taking the break every hour and getting off your butt, standing up, even for like 2 or 3 minutes, and moving about, because you're going to circulate the oxygen and blood in all of that tissue at your sitter bones and in the big butt muscles, and you're going to open up those hip flexors just by holding on to your wall or a ledge and lifting one leg up behind you a few times, 1, 2, 3 times, the other leg, 1, 2, 3, sideways, 1, 2, 3. It takes like literally 2 to 3 minutes to do that. You've now reset your body so that if you're going to go sit again for another hour, your body's going to be reset at a whole new higher functioning level, and you're going to have less. If you sit for 3-4 hours at a time, which people can do very easily, get lost in playing video games or looking at Facebook or whatever, it becomes like you start really almost like suffocating your cells in the tissue there. You start losing cellular metabolic efficiency happening. And over time, that begins to take a toll. And it begins to create shape change. It begins to create capacity change and functionality. So that's one thing you could do. You can also choose to go outside. Sunlight is a major natural healer. And I know you live down in the southern climates down there where you have more sunlight than I do here in the Pacific Northwest most of the year. But even if it's not bright sun, it's just you go outside your door and there's sunlight, even if it's a cloudy day. You're getting activation through your eyes. It's going through into brain centers that are actually communicating through the body to actually create a reset with your functionality, with what we call the energy producing centers in your cells, and resetting your biological clock. So a good practice for every one of us is to walk outside your house, whatever the weather, before 10 o'clock in the morning, before that sun is too intense, or for some of you out in the East Coast, probably a little earlier, because that sun comes up pretty strong there, and just gaze out. You don't stare at the sun, just gaze out on the horizon and just kind of commune with say a prayer, bless your property, talk to nature, talk to the tree that's out there, or the ocean if you're nearby, or just allow yourself to have open eyes and scan the horizon and take in that very nourishing spectrum of light that we need every day of our life. Okay? That's something you could do. Daily practice, takes 5 or 10 minutes. No stress. Every elder can open up the door and get pushed out in their wheelchair and do that. Okay. It's not hard. And it has big impact for the rest of the day for you. The other thing we can do is, because I'm going back to nature, if you haven't noticed, away from technology into nature. We have to create that balance. Eat things that are more wholesome, that are not full of chemicals, that are not processed. We don't need as much meat that we think we do. A little handful in your hand a couple times a day is great. Drinking greens, there's great green juices out there. And I know for some elders, it's hard to digest raw foods a lot, but a little bit of steamy, or make some soups with a lot of vegetables and drink that broth. That is a nice way to start making it a little more absorbable into the cells, along with whatever else you like to eat. And of course, we all know the golden rules of eating. Keep down on the sugars, because it's toxic for the body. Up on the good fats, even if somebody's saying, oh, you shouldn't eat fat because your cholesterol is high. Studies actually show that when you eat good fats, the bad fats and sugar create high cholesterol. Now look at the research. It's out there. It's been a big myth, and the pharmaceuticals have been winning on that one, because the statin meds, even a lot of elders know these days they don't want to take statin meds anymore. They're not good for the body, and you can get your blood cleaner by staying off sugar and staying off what we call processed vegetable oils that are no good. You want animal oils, or good vegetable oils, or like coconut oil. You want good aloe vera oil, and you want really good quality olive oil that you can pour over things like your cooked vegetables or meats, and take that in. Take that in different ways, and that's really good. Animal fats, good animal fats are good for you. So when you eat salmon, eat the skin, and when your nice crisp salmon skin is a yum yum. When you eat chicken, you can eat the dark meat. When you eat hamburger meat, get the good stuff. Get buffalo. What do they call it? Buffalo meat, yeah, or even any hamburger meat that's fairly clean. You want to cook that up, and it doesn't have to be highly expensive meat. You just need a small portion with some good vegetables. That is really good to eat.
And I found also, for example, chicken legs. And I actually learned this from Guruji Mahendra Trivedi.
Yes.
I watched him cook chicken legs and lentils, dal, which is basically lentils with some Indian spices. And that's something, if you're somebody who wants a simple, healthful way to make stuff really taste good, Indian spices I found you can buy them at the grocery store, and you can buy organic or not, but you can. And I was just amazed at how those spices, and if you look them up, like turmeric and even salt and pepper in itself, there's nutritional values in all of that.
There sure is. Yeah, like the pink Himalayan salt, to use really good salt, or use, like you said, the nice Indian spices. The turmeric is great for the brain and for cognition. Your black pepper moves the blood, good black pepper. And that takes me to the subject of good essential oils, which I suggest to elders all the time. Cypress oil in a base of coconut, to put it on your legs for microcirculation, to help with swelling and edema and poor circulation. Brightening oils like the orange based or the citrus based oils open up your joy factor. It opens up your mentation to be up, alive, expanded. Calming oils for sleep, like your lavender or your frankincense. Those are things that you can get a diffuser for $30 and run these as you sleep. And it can affect so many health conditions with quality essential oils, therapeutic grade. They're excellent. But mentioning Guruji Mahendra Trivedi, this is really the thing I've been waiting to share, is really a most potent thing besides following the laws of nature and how you interact with your world and interact with each other, the people in it, and even interact with yourself, which is a whole other discussion, I've spent time in association learning from Mr. Guruji Mahendra Trivedi, who is highly gifted, and he by the divine nature to be able to change atomic structure. He has what I would call like a superhuman gift, and he's been doing this since very early in his life, and over the last probably, I don't know, a decade, 15, 20 years of his life, he's been doing more in the area of science with this, because his life's mission is to help shift the paradigm of science, and ultimately it'll affect healthcare. That's why I'm such a lover and a devoted associate of Guruji Mahendra Trivedi, and I've actually been part of his group of people who've been supported by him and gifted by him to be able to do life force transmissions as well, and have science, evidence-based science behind me, along with other people, that shows the impact of being able to intentionally and vibrationally come present with innate intelligence of nature, or what we might call the God of our understanding, and call upon that silently. I can transmit this into living and non-living substances. And so when I've worked with elders, I've silently done that with them. And I've even overtly, consciously set up a 3-month daily transmission with one of the elders I worked with, who could really understand and really wanted to do that. And she had a massive improvement in her daily lifestyle. She was feeling less anxious. She was sleeping better at night. She was starting to allow herself to feel more, what's the word I want to say, kind of interested and hopeful about doing new outreach in her life. And she started getting more involved in the activities in this community that she lived in. And just her life force got a little peppier. She's a little smart aleck to begin with, which we all love her for. And she began to really kind of share her wisdom more creatively. And I saw that impact of being able to receive what's called life force transmissions. And many people at all ages are starting to do that more, and recognizing that whole field of medicine. I shouldn't say medicine. It's a whole field of healthcare delivery that is non-contact. It moves through time and space. You don't even have to be in the same city, let alone the same room with the person. It's done through thought, intention, and the connection through the divine. So I'm not doing the healing. The innate intelligence does. So this energy has an intelligence of its own to reach the recipient and give that recipient exactly what it needs to deal with whatever that recipient has put forth as their intention. So my job is very silent. I ask the recipient to ask for what they're looking for what they're requesting from that innate intelligence, from life force. And then we do these transmissions, and they report effects. Now, I'm not the only person doing this in the world. There's a lot of other people who are, and it's starting to take root in our healthcare system. It's still very on the cutting edge, but there's a whole field of study that's being done. It can be called biofield study or life force science. and Mr. Mahendra Trivedi himself is got over 6,000 studies, and he continues in the process now of doing human clinical trials, because a lot of his work has been done on agriculture, on substances like non-living organisms, like basic like metals and other earth substances for use in industry to make them stronger and more vibrant. And what he has found from all of his studies is this life force will actually raise up the very atoms, or what in a human we would call them biophotons, to activate them, to increase a blossoming of that person or that substance or that animal or that living thing like a tree or a plant, to actually produce more life force, more fruits. It becomes more available for use and implementation in better ways. So imagine what that does for the human being. An elder who can't get out of their life or who can't go to the gym and work out all the time may just be able to begin to have the experience that I've seen other elders have of better sleep, better bioavailability and absorption of their food and water, more life force sustained through the day, a lighter feeling in their heart and mind, less anxiety. This all builds on increased wellness, happiness, new connections in life. It's like revivifying something and bringing it to life more, to be in a place to enjoy the fruits of being alive rather than feeling, limited and in the process of closing down. For me, it's a non-toxic and non-invasive way to get your, quote, vitamin life force, to get your way of, that's a true medicine that is available for everything on this planet. And that's what I've dedicated my future with as a nurse, and helping to shape that and educate people that this is available as an alternative to taking, 12 different meds every day, which tend to only do, maybe if you're lucky, a little bit of symptom management.
Wow, you've covered a lot today, and I think that's really interesting to talk about. Here are all of our health issues facing us, and that, of course, modern medicine in the United States, typically we look at medicine, and then I know there's a functional medicine is something that more and more doctors and nurses, I've talked to a lot of functional medicine doctors, because they're just so tired of them, being pill pushers.
Yes.
That isn't why people decided to become medical professionals. That most of the people who I have interviewed who are in talking about alternative medicine, typically, that is exactly why they're in the profession. It's because they want to educate people and help people to understand that there's more than just, a pill to solve things, that we are human beings, and we have, mind, body, spirit, or soul. And obviously you've been in this field and you understand the science and the connection between nature and everything. And of course, if you look at Eastern medicine, there's a lot more, thousands and thousands and thousands of years of history related to different medicines beyond just giving people a pill. I was really interested in when you were talking about the oils. And I think I'll invite you back another time, and maybe we can talk about those, I guess you might call that a natural healthcare remedy, when you were talking about different oils and things that could help, you were talking about rubbing it into your skin that could help with swelling and different things like that. I know, for example, taking a bath in Epsom salts, helps with magnesium and things like that. And
Yes.
that obviously is adding Epsom salts to water and you soak in it. So
Yes.
your body, of course, has different ways of taking in nutrition or different things. So, wow, there's so much that the education of starting to understand, that life force energy transmissions can be something that you might want to supplement your health with. And to learn more about it. So if somebody, Kathryn, wants to learn more about life force energy transmissions and talk to you more, how can they do that?
Well, they can contact me through my business email, my website. My website is kathrynsweas.com, and that's Kathryn. Sweas is SWEAS.com. And there you'll find an email link. I also have a Facebook page called Kathryn Sweas. I'm on LinkedIn as Kathryn Sweas, Life Force Transmissions, I believe it's called there. But yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Twitter under Kathryn Sweas, and so I would be very happy to meet anyone who might want to explore that and be able to answer questions or, partner with you and join and exploring more of this and how it can help you.
Great. So kathrynsweas.com, and of course on the website, you not only can contact Kathryn, there's a lot of information about the science. There is information and testimonials from people, and frequently asked questions are answered. So it'd be a really good starting point to find out more. And then, of course, you can make an appointment to talk to Kathryn more about you and what you'd like to know. I mean, I know that when we do these interviews, often it just opens the door to all of these questions about, well, what is this? Could it work for me? How does it work with what I'm already doing? And of course, like you said, Kathryn, life force energy is the connection to the divine, which some people would call it nature, some people would call it God, some people would call it, the God of their understanding, life force. I mean,
yes.
Energy.
Universal intelligence, innate intelligence, yes.
So it's really complementary to any belief system. I guess that's my point. Well, thank you so much, Kathryn. I really appreciate your time today.
Me too. I appreciate this time with you, Tammy, and you be well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is Tammy Patzer. Go make it a beautiful day. This information is not intended to provide diagnosis, treatment, or medical advice. Products, services, information, and other content provided in this broadcast, including information that may be provided in this broadcast directly or by linking to third-party websites, are provided for informational purposes only. Please consult with a physician or other healthcare professional regarding any medical or health-related diagnosis or treatment options.
You've been listening to today's top health and wellness innovators and thought leaders on Optimal Health Radio. To get more solid health and wellness information, visit optimalhealthradio.com.